My name is Eloin Pierce, and Thanksgiving had always been the one holiday I believed my family could put their differences aside. I was wrong. For years, my parents had compared me to my older brother, Grant. Grant was everything they were proud of. He had a successful career, a beautiful house, an expensive car, and a way of making every room feel like it belonged to him. I was different. I had built my career slowly. I worked as a freelance financial consultant and spent most of my time working from home. I didn't have a huge salary, I didn't drive an expensive car, and because I wasn't married yet, my parents often treated my life as though it was still unfinished. My mother, Maribel, was especially good at making comments that sounded like jokes. "You're still doing that little work-from-home thing, or maybe one day you'll have a real career like your brother." I usually smiled. I had learned that arguing with my parents only gave them another reason to call me sensitive. Then came Thanksgiving. My parents hosted dinner at their house every year. I almost didn't go, but my mother called me 3 days before. "Please come this year, Eloin." Her voice sounded unusually warm. I agreed. When I arrived, Grant was already there with his wife and children. Everyone was dressed beautifully. I walked into the kitchen carrying a homemade pie. My mother looked at it. "You made that?" "Yes," she smiled. "Well, at least you brought something useful." I laughed awkwardly. Dinner started normally, then Grant began talking about a new investment property he had purchased. My father immediately looked impressed. "That's my son." Smiled. My mother looked at me. "So Eloin, are you still renting that little apartment?" "Yes." "How long are you planning to do that?" I shrugged. "I'm saving." Laughed. "For what?" I looked at him. "For my future." Everyone laughed. I tried to smile. Then my father said, "You should take notes from your brother. He's 36 and already owns 3 properties. Mother added, "Some people just don't have ambition." That one hurt, but I stayed quiet. Then Grant looked at me and said, "Don't worry, Eloin. Maybe one day you'll be successful enough to afford Thanksgiving dinner." Everyone laughed again. I put my fork down. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply smiled and said, "Maybe." Then I continued eating. Nobody noticed that my phone had been vibrating in my pocket. I checked it under the table. It was an email from one of my biggest clients. They had just approved a consulting contract worth more than $400,000. Didn't tell anyone. Not because I wanted revenge, because I realized something. My family had already decided who they believed I was. Nothing I said at that table would change their minds, so I finished dinner and left. 2 weeks later, my phone rang at 6:12 in the morning. It was my father. I answered. Voice sounded frightened. "Eloin, I need your help." I sat up. "What happened?" He explained that Grant's investment company had run into serious financial problems. One of the properties had been purchased using a complicated loan structure. The market had changed, the property value had fallen, several investors were demanding their money back, and my father had personally guaranteed part of the loan. If the situation wasn't resolved quickly, my parents could lose their house. I was silent. "Dad, why are you calling me?" He hesitated. "Because you understand financial contracts." I almost laughed. The same daughter they had mocked at Thanksgiving was suddenly the person they needed. "I need to see the documents," I said. My father sent everything. I spent the next 6 hours reading through contracts, loan agreements, and investment reports, and I found something. Grant had entered into a private agreement with an investment company, but the contract contained a clause that could protect my parents if certain conditions weren't met. The problem was that nobody had noticed it. I called my father. "Don't sign anything. The company is trying to make you believe you have to immediately pay the full amount." "Do you mean?" I found a clause in the original agreement. I explained it. My father became quiet. Then he asked, "Can you help us negotiate?" I agreed. Over the next 2 weeks I worked with their attorney. We discovered that the investment company had failed to meet several obligations. That meant my parents had more legal leverage than they realized. We negotiated a settlement. My parents didn't lose their house. Grant's company survived, but there was one condition. Grant had to sell one of his properties. The day everything was finalized, my father called me. "Don't know how to thank you." I didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Your mother and I were wrong." Those words were difficult to hear, not because I didn't want them, because I had waited years for them. A week later, my parents invited me over. My mother opened the door. She hugged me. "I owe you an apology." I nodded. She continued, "We've spent years comparing you to Grant." "Yes, we thought success looked a certain way." I smiled. "Now," she sighed. "Now I realize we were measuring the wrong things." Father joined us. He said, "You never needed to prove anything to us." I looked at him. "Actually, Dad, I did." Looked surprised. "I spent years trying to prove that I wasn't the disappointment you thought I was." Lowered his eyes. "I know." Then I told them something I'd never said before. "I didn't help you because I wanted you to feel guilty." Mother began crying. "I helped because you're my parents." That Thanksgiving had taught me something. Sometimes the people who mock your progress simply don't understand what you're building. And sometimes the greatest answer isn't proving them wrong. It's quietly becoming the person they eventually realize they should have believed in.